Hey everyone, I'm Jason, and today we're going to talk about the difference between passing by value and passing by reference. So when dealing with things passing by value, I like to think of smaller things like variables, and when dealing with things that pass by reference, I like to think of bigger things like arrays, because arrays by default pass by reference. And an analogy I like to think of when dealing with these concepts is the difference between driving a 2020 Corolla versus driving the Batmobile from Batman the Dark Knight. So essentially, if you wanted to drive a 2020 Corolla, you just go to your local Toyota dealership and they give you a replica of the original 2020 Corolla. So if you put in miles or you accidentally damage it, you are actually dealing with a copy or a replica of the original. However, if you're trying to drive the Batmobile from the Dark Knight, essentially you are dealing with the original. You would have to reach out to DC Studios or Warner Brothers and drive the original itself because there is no replica. So if you were to accidentally damage that one or put in miles to that one, you would actually be directly affecting the original. And in order to really highlight this distinction, I wanted to create some code here, write up some code here. So to really show the difference. So essentially what I'm going to do is I'm going to create a variable and I'm going to create an array, and I'm going to deal with both of them and see how a manipulation of both of them can really highlight the difference. So essentially here I'm going to create a function, or I'm going to declare a function called setInteger, which is going to be our variable, and let's call it a. There we go. And then next I'm going to declare the array, and here we are. Give it a size. Boom. And inside main, here we are. Yep. I'm going to define the variable that we called it a, and I'm going to give it the value of 5. And then for the array, I'm going to give it 3 elements, and the elements I'm going to assign it are 1, 2, and 3. Cool. Here we are. And then what am I going to do next? I'm going to call them, and I'm going to call the function setInteger. And of course, I need to call the function for the array. Here we are. Boom. Everything looks good. And then I'm going to, of course, print them out. Let's see. The first thing I want to print out, I want it to be very specific. So essentially, a equals this, and then, of course, put the a in there, and then we'll end here. Cool. In order to show the specificness with the array, let's do something similar. Here we have cout. Let's call the first element here. Be very specific. The first element is equal to, of course, first element. Here we are. And let's end it here. There we are. And then let's do a similar thing for the rest of the elements. So just going to copy this here. Let's do that for element 2 and element 3. There we are. Cool. And let's end it there. Here we are. Sounds good. Everything's looking good so far. Now let's create our function, or let's define our functions. So here we have the setInt function, and nice, so good. And then a, let's change it to 100. See what happens there. And then for the array, let's define that too. It's called f. Here it is. Boom. And here we're gonna change the numbers of each element. So for the first element, let's change it to 50. And then, of course, for the second element, just for clarity purposes, let's change it to 51. Oh, semicolon. And then for the third element, here we are. Let's change it to 52. Boom. Everything looks clear. So let's see what comes out. Great. So essentially the thing that I want to highlight is that the variable is equal to number 5. And we want to, although we want it to change to 100, since it's passing by value, it stays 5. However, when we change the array, everything changes here, because essentially we're passing by reference and we're not dealing with the copy, we're actually affecting the array itself, which changes 1, 2, 3 into 50, 51, 52. In contrast, when you're dealing with the copy, the original stays unaffected, so this is why it's printing out the original. However, you can still bypass this manually, and in order to do that, there's a cool trick with an ampersand. Here we're going to pass the variable by reference. So here we just put another ampersand. Oops, we put an ampersand in our definition, and we put one in our declaration up here. So let's try to run this, and there we go. So essentially, now that we're passing the variable by reference, you see that we affect the variable here, and that's why we get 100 over here. So essentially, you're changing 5 into 100. Because why? Because you're affecting the original. You're passing by reference. I hope this helps, and I've been Jason.